Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Please forgive me for doing a Torah portion once again on more than just the last portion of the Torah, the third one, which you are reading in Shul today. Today, I'm going to be doing it on the second and third. I promise next time it will only be on the third part. But I love this part of both the second and third part because it is all about the very first Seder, very first Passover. It is where the genesis of our Seder begins. And if you listen closely, it is the aspects of the Seder that almost always appear in every single Seder. It is what we all do when we celebrate Passover. So the date of the Passover Seder, the beginning of Passover, is the 14th day of Nisan, and that's recorded in chapter 12, verse 6. In chapter 12, verse 17, we are told that the first and last day of Passover are special holy days in which you are not allowed to work. Now, the rabbis expanded that to 8 days because of those of us only in the diaspora. That meant the first two and the last two. But the idea that this Passover lasted for 7 days and the beginning and the end are different than the middle, that comes from our Torah portion, as well as the distinction between Chag, the holy day, and Chol Moed, the holy day, but you can still work, which is in the middle. What do I mean by that? The rabbis could have said there is only 2 days of Passover at the beginning. Life goes back to normal in the middle, and then you come back together at the end. But they didn't. They said it was all Passover with certain restrictions that involved all of it, i.e., eating matzah and no leavening, which we'll come to later. But they said they're not the same as far as work. And so that Chol Moed, that middle part, you're still allowed to work. And all of that comes from this Torah portion. It begins, though, by legislating in chapter 12, verse 3, that every single household will celebrate Passover in their own home. Unlike most biblical holy days, when the celebration of Passover takes place in the temple, or in today would be the synagogue, the same idea, right? In the tabernacle, temple, and now synagogue. This sacrifice, this one begins in the home. And Passover to this day has been a homebound celebration. Jews might never go to a synagogue, but they still have a Seder. But the other piece of it that's legislated is that we will eat or sacrifice, if you prefer, a lamb in our home. There aren't many biblical times when we're told to sacrifice in our home after the book of Genesis, A. But B, the idea that it's a lamb in our home is a really interesting one. Now, as Ashkenazic Jews, many of us are Ashkenazic Jews, we have a shank bone to symbolize this slaughtering of the lamb that's legislated in 12:3. But Sephardic and Ethiopian Jews to this day actually eat a lamb, and Sumerian and Ethiopian Jews actually go through a public ritual sacrificing of that lamb before they eat it. We still remember this home sacrifice to this day, embedded somehow in our celebration. In verse 8 of the same chapter, we're told to eat bitter herbs. And then in verses 15, 39, and chapter 13, verse 6, we're told to eat matzah for 7 days. Again, the rabbis extended it to 8 for those of us in the diaspora. But 7 days of matzah and unleavened bread. And this was the moment when the biblical author, the biblical legislator, connected the holy days of the beginning to the holy days at the end. For what connects them? Eating of matzah the whole time. The skeleton of the ritual foods were set to eat during Passover. The shank bone or lamb, the bitter herbs, and of course matzah is all legislated in today's Torah portion. But not only are we told the foods to eat, we are also told the foods not to eat in chapters 12, verse 15, and 13, verse 7. We're told not only to hide all leavening, as many of us do in our basements, but rather to remove it from our house. For leavening food are foods of luxury and time, something people on the run do not have. In chapter 12, verse 4, we're told to share our paschal sacrifice with those too poor to buy a lamb themselves. Taking care of our needs is not enough. Most Seders open the door for all the poor to come in a way of enacting this commandment. But in the Middle Ages, it was more than just a dramatic inaction. Poor people would literally line up outside the doors of different people of means in the community, waiting for them to get to this part of the Seder. And when they opened the door, they invited them into their Seder. To this day, many communities, many synagogues, just like us, either pair people with other people who are having a Seder or have a communal Seder with scholarships embedded in the cost of the Seder, both of which we have done here at CJC. As a side, my little side advertisement, we are doing second night Seder. We just decided it will be 100% on Zoom. Stay tuned, more information to come. As for the Magid, the telling of the story, 1 3/4 of a part come from this Torah portion as well. First, in chapter 12, verse 14, we're told to remember Exodus from Egypt for all times. And so the Magid was introduced into the Seder as the telling of the Passover story. We are never to forget, and so every Seder has this telling in different forms, but has this telling embedded in it. And although the rubric of the four children, or the four sons, is rabbinic, what they say is actually biblical. And three of the four sons come from this Torah portion, the fourth from Deuteronomy. Chapter 12, verses 26 to 27, chapter 13, verses 8 to 9, and chapter 13, verse 14. Passover is mentioned later in the Torah with other requirements added, but the Genesis, the very beginning of our Seder, is right here in today's Torah portion. It is truly amazing. It is really, truly amazing. And the power of Passover, the ability for it to be transformed and retold, transvalued, and updated, and the rabbinic mechanism of creating a holiday that has allowed this ritual over 3,000 years ago to still be celebrated today. There are very few contemporary religions that can say this ritual is over 3,000 years old. So hold on to it because it's a very powerful one we never want to lose. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.